myself. There we go. Okay. Share the screen. There we are. Now we're back to normal stuff. So let's pick up again. Genesis chapter 12, verse 4 to 9. Genesis 12, verse 4. So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his nephew, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran, and they set out for the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan. Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem, to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. The Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your seed I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord who had appeared to him. We saw last week the seed was referring to Christ, ultimately the bookends between Abram and Christ. Then he proceeded from there, verse 8, to the mountain on the east of Bethel, pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east, and there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Abram journeyed on, continuing toward the Negev. All righty. So it's 1876 BC. We're in the Middle Bronze Age. Egypt is in its first intermediate period after the Old Kingdom with its pyramids has fallen away. We've got two dynasties at the same time. We've got the 11th dynasty ruling in Thebes with their pharaoh. We've got the 10th dynasty in Heracleopolis with their pharaoh, who happens to be a guy named Khety IV, whom Abraham is going to have some interactions with. So Khety.
Oh, I thought you said Kenny.
Yeah, no, Kenny's his uncle. Yeah, Khety, Khety in our letters, Khety IV. And in the land of Sumer, especially the city-state of we have Amu, who's the king, and he is pretty much dominating Mesopotamia, the land of Sumer at this time. It's a Sumerian revival that's happening. So he's the big head honcho over there. And so we've got the Word of God is always our primary source. Background stuff, getting from mostly David Roll and his works, looking at how this interweaves with the Bible and confirms and backs up a lot of what we see in the Bible. We'll see how this all dovetails quite beautifully, actually. So Abram leaves Haran, where his father Terah had died. So let's go to Haran and journey off from here. Maybe. Fasten your seatbelts because we're going to go 5 miles an hour. So it's in Haran. There we go. That Terah dies and Abram heads out from here. Haran is up in the northern area. Now remember, these folks in the north, the descendants of Japheth, those Indo-Europeans, a lot of them were called Amorites, which means the Westerners. They're the ones who are losing pasture ground up here, so they're coming down into the south and raiding the southern areas here, the land of Mesopotamia and all that, trying to anyway. So they're all trying to deal with this famine that's hitting the area and losing some grazing ground. So that's Haran as it looks today. So Abram travels from here, and the journey to where he goes in the land of Canaan takes him through this place called Tadmor, also known as Palmyra today. Palmyra is in the news a few years ago when ISIS was destroying a lot of the historic artifacts and relics and trying to erase some of the history and assert themselves and their own narrative in the land. ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria. So Abraham is going through Syria. Also, it's in our Bibles as Syria in some translations, other translations, it's Aram. It's the same place. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob are sometimes referred to as wandering Arameans, wandering Syrians. They're not Syrians by birth, they're Shemites by birth, Semites by birth through the line of Shem, but they passed through Syria, so that through Aram, so that's how they got that that name and that phrase. Yeah, Peggy.
Speaking of the Shemites and all of the ites,
Yes.
Are the Israelites the only ites left?
Great question. So Sister Peggy asks, are the Israelites the only ones left? And I would say no, and I would also say it depends on our definitions, because from the 12 tribes of Israel, there are probably blood descendants alive today from all of the tribes. Now, the nation of the 10 tribes of the north, the nation that was called Israel, was destroyed by Assyria in 723 BC. That nation never returned. The 2 tribes in the south, Judah and Benjamin, they were destroyed by Babylon in 587 BC. And they had the restoration after 70 years, a year for every Sabbath. And so, as we'll get to in Wednesday nights, when the nation of Israel was reestablished in Canaan in the Promised Land, voted on 1947, settled in 1948, they took the name of Israel. Now, that wasn't because of which specific tribe they were. We'll get to actually scriptural reasons how that name came about to be chosen for that. But to hopefully answer your question, I usually try short answer first, but I forgot to do that. So you get the long answer first. And I don't even know if there is a short answer for me. But bloodline, people from all 12 tribes still alive today. As far as national identity, the folks that are there now calling themselves the name of Israel, they basically look to themselves as being the restoration of what had been separated. So all those who are of that can come. In the land of what's Israel today, you've got Muslim, Arabs, you got all sorts of different people living there of different bloodlines, different religions and faiths. So, but it's their nation and they are in control of it.
So you don't, because we don't hear that, well, obviously we don't hear those terms today. Terms today, we don't.
Well, yeah, and the word Jew, it refers to Judah, who's only one of the 12. Jesus was a descendant of the tribe of Judah. So we throw around some terms somewhat loosely. We think it's all a bunch of Jews living in Israel. Well, there are a lot of Jews living in Israel, but they're not all descendants of Judah. So.
Well, so it is Jewish of faith, or is it a quote unquote race?
The religion is called Judaism.
Okay.
Right. And so the word Judah means praise. And so that's where that comes from. These are the people who praise God. So, yeah. Hebrew comes from Eber, who's, there's some bad jokes about who makes the coffee, but Eber comes from, yes. But Eber, who fathered Peleg at the time of the Tower of Babel. Peleg was named for the events of the Tower of Babel because the earth as it existed was divvied up amongst the people who spread out according to their languages on that earth. So a Hebrew, and Abraham we'll see gets described as a Hebrew because he's from the line of Eber.
So that's what I was, so are Jews and Hebrews different people?
Judah is a descendant of Eber in the direct line.
Okay.
So you could say all Jews are Hebrews, not all Hebrews are Jews, to make it more confusing.
Yeah. Okay.
I have even some more fun confusion to add.
Oh my God.
In the time of David, when he was on the run from Saul, King Saul, he had a band of Hebrews with him. Well, were they Hebrews or were they Israelites? Eber is before Israel. Israel, Jacob, is a descendant of Eber. So, but those outside those tribes, because there were others too. Jacob in that, so Eber's here, Judah's in Jacob / Israel's in one line, Judah under him with the 12. There are other offshoots too from Eber. So you could be a Hebrew and not be an Israelite, not be a Jew. So David's band of folks who were traveling with him and supporting him, some of them were Hebrews, but not Israelites.
So really, Muslims could be Hebrews.
Muslims do descend from Eber. Yes, they do. They are, Muslims are Hebrews.
So bloodline.
Bloodline, yes.
Not who they worship.
Because
That's interesting.
now anyone without the bloodline can convert to Islam, just like you can
Yeah,
convert to
we're not.
Judaism, things like that. But yeah, Muhammad claimed descent from one of Ishmael's son, Kedar, I believe. Ishmael, a son of Abraham. Abraham, who was a descendant of Eber, but Abraham was an ancestor of Israel and Judah. So while Muslims can be Hebrews, descendants of Eber, they can't be Jews as far as descendants of Judah. They can't be Israelites as far as descendants of Israel / Jacob.
That explains a lot of the current situation
Yeah.
that we see.
Oh yeah.
It's all family, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and as we read Wednesday night, in the Quran, the Muslims believe that it was Ishmael who was offered up and not Isaac. And they branch off from there.
interesting. So-
Yeah. Yeah.
Food for thought.
So here is Abram the Hebrew in the land of the Arabs. Well, actually, right now it's the land of the Canaanites, descendants of Ham. The Canaanites were the ones under the curse. Not Ham was not. The Canaanites were. And so here comes Abraham. He's traveling through Palmyra, which had a lot of its stuff recently destroyed by ISIS. Then the journey continues on. You can see the path down there through Damascus in Syria. Famous place where Paul had his donkey incident. The road called straight is still there today. So from Damascus, from Tadmor / Palmyra and Damascus, he makes it to Shechem. From Haran to Shechem is 400 miles.
That's like going 15 miles away.
So 15, 20 miles a day, that's like a month's travel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So notice, right? So here's modern Nablus is kind of off to the side here. Here's Shechem, the archaeological site right here. Mount Gerizim. Notice right here, Jacob's well. From the chosen, the woman at the well, the Samaritans, they have a connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and all that stuff. Yeah.
I was saying, what are these people eating out there? What are they scared of?
But when Eric showed one of those pictures, I noticed that I saw green areas, so they
Mhm.
farm,
Yeah.
right?
They're very small.
Some of it's the time of year that these satellite pictures are taken. You'll see some where it's like a split screen where it's brown here and green there. That's because they're taken at different times of the year and then matched lined up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But I mean,
That'll happen
I'm
too.
sure they have agriculture. and,
Oh, yeah.
You know, just like we do, I mean, fruit trees, yeah.
The book of Deuteronomy talks about how the promised land is a land that God himself cares for. How you others, these other lands have to be worked. God himself cares for this land. When I was pastoring at Arlington, working in Riverside, my bosses just made a contract with folks in Israel. They made a trip to Israel. And they came back and made their observation, wow. And this was not any slur of any kind, it was just an observation of fact. The different areas of the nation of Israel that were Arab controlled, Israeli controlled, you could see a night and day difference. Dirt and rocks, the Arab controlled stuff, and it was lush green and cared for the Jewish held areas. So,
I forgot about that.
Yeah. Yeah. So not only do we have a site here referencing Jacob's well, here in Shechem Nablus, we have Joseph's tomb.
Oh, is this what you showed us on Wednesday night?
What I showed us on Wednesday night. So for those who missed Wednesday night, I'm going to stop sharing Google Earth for a moment and share PowerPoint from a few years ago when I was teaching through the book of Joshua. And let's do this. And I got one more bonus thing to share since Wednesday night. I won't reread the article that I read, but last Sunday morning, I brought a devotional talking about Joseph reuniting with his brothers. Well, that same day, Sunday, April 10th, something happened relating to Joseph. Okay, you're getting that there. Let me get this here on my screen. Display settings. Wakey. Oh, there we go. Almost. If you didn't hit it 5 times, Eric, there we go. Okay, now we're looking at the same stuff. So there's Joseph's tomb. Picture taken 1894 AD. Because remember, he asked his family when they left, because Joseph knew there was going to be an Exodus, that they take his bones with them. We have excavated Joseph's tomb in Egypt. There are no bones there. Grave diggers don't take bones. They're of no value. They take grave goods. And so Joseph's bones were brought to the promised land, buried here in Shechem, where Abraham was, his great grandpa. So there it is in 1894. There's a picture of it. There's what happened October 7th of 2000 when the Muslims attacked Joseph's tomb during one of their intifadas. So it got cleaned up and restored after that. But there's some of the damage we see here. And what I shared on Wednesday night, what happened last Sunday, April 10th, the same day I was reading about Joseph and his brothers, little beknownst to me, Joseph's tomb was attacked yet again, as we're in the Islamic month of Ramadan. And so there's some of the damage done, as we see here, Joseph's tomb in Nablus, April 10th, 2022.
So they just vandalized it? They
Yep.
Didn't steal his remains? Or
No.
anything?
No. And this picture was just uploaded since then, them doing some of the repair work on it. Yeah,
Look at those soldiers. there.
Yeah.
We probably had to have soldiers.
yeah. And he's happy. Yeah. They're not gonna mess with us. We're gonna fix that.
And he's really, that's really his, Joseph's, I mean.
Like I said Wednesday, can I guarantee you 100% that Joseph's bones are in that box? No, I can't guarantee that. But
the symbolism
everyone, yeah, not the symbolism, but also pretty much there hasn't been a lot of disagreement or argument or evidence to the contrary. So it's very likely possible. This is Peggy.
Well, don't they also, say more of the Muslim side, well, it could be Jewish too. I mean, believe things like you desecrate or you take the remains, there's curses that go along with that. They believe in those kinds of things. So I can see where they would vandalize it to make a point, but they did not disturb the bones. If they're there.
So that's a thought too. Peggy brings up the notion that is a legitimate thought out there that the bones themselves we're going to leave intact. We don't want to curse upon ourselves for messing with the bones, but we're going to desecrate the gravesite itself without messing with the actual bones. So yeah, there are some different thoughts and concerns that people would have on that in their way of approaching things. So sure, that's a definite thought out there.
Well, I think it was just on the news today that there have been a lot of skirmishes and fighting going on over there because of the coinciding with Ramadan and Easter week. So what's the
Remember, and so Sister Ashley asked about hearing about skirmishes and Easter week happening currently and the timing of Ramadan and kind of overlap there. If you remember in Wednesday nights, we talked about how in the 1920s, the shift from coming out of World War II, everyone saying, hooray, let's have a land for Israel, the Balfour Declaration and all that stuff. Well, that didn't happen then. It took a few decades later in the 1940s for it to actually happen. What changed in between? Well, one of the things that happened in the 1920s was the Arab riots. During the processions, there's an Arab procession happening. Someone shouted out something about the Jews attacking, and so the Arabs started attacking the Jews. The British government had to step in. So there became a lot of question with the Jews and a lot of people wanting to kind of back off and hands off. So but that tension between the Arabs living there and the Jews reclaiming their homeland, there's, that tension and that scuffling, and they take the opportunities of holy occasions to launch attacks, to honor their own holy holidays and to desecrate someone else's holy holidays. Holiday actually means holy day. It's where that word comes from too.
they can't just coexist?
They can't just coexist, Sister Ashley asks. Israel has no problem as far as the whole two-state solution you hear about. Well, we'll just have a land over here for Palestine, land over here from Israel. Y'all shut up and be happy. That will never happen because Israel is fine with it. Israel is the one place there, the government of Israel, the religion of Israel, they allow and tolerate and accommodate all the other religions there, Christianity, Muslim, all the others. But it's the Islamic powers that be over here in this area that are against there being a Jewish state. We don't want two states.
It's not all Muslims.
Oh, no.
It's these kind of extreme.
Oh, no, yeah, absolutely. Keep in mind, when we talk about those who conduct these things, the important disclaimer is usually made. We're not talking about all Muslims, all followers of the Muslim religion. When we talk about the different Christian, quote unquote, Christian institutions and denominations, we could point out how a lot of them were started by a man and have a start date that has no connection to the church Jesus started. Now, there are plenty of people who are genuinely saved and love the Lord in those different institutions. So the institution may be a false institution scripturally, but people love the Lord, they're saved, and that salvation is just as legitimate. So too, whatever people are doing with the Islamic religion, and you could read the Quran and decide for yourself if it seems like a religion of peace or not. And it's again, what people do with it. And so we understand God-given liberty. We don't impose our faith on anyone else. We share and we witness and we encourage, but we want it to be voluntary and coming from an individual and their relationship with God coming to join with us. Not because we're imposing or insisting. It's not convert or die. There's no Christ in that. People who have done that in Christ's name, Christ had no part in that. Sister Minnie.
Okay, but the Quran and the Hadith say if you're going to follow their religion religiously,
Mhm.
you have to kill everybody who will not convert to Muslim.
You
That's
do.
their religion.
There is one alternative. You can tax them.
You can tax them.
Yes, well, that's the way of.
And it's-
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes, according to the Quran and
Yeah, that's the way of the
Let me
world.
just say, there is no coexistence as far as it.
Yes.
Except if you can tax them.
yes, exactly. So kill the infidels or tax them.
But there are plenty, you heard people say, well, they're Catholic, but they're not a practicing Catholic.
Mhm.
Well, there are Muslims who are not practicing Muslims, but you have to tell them.
How many people call themselves Christian and don't know much about the Bible?
Right.
Well, I was that way.
Yeah.
I mean, through most of my life,
How many Mormons don't know much about the more involved doctrines of that particular faith? How many Catholics think that Peter was the first pope when he'd never heard the word before and wasn't a part of all, and that the Roman Catholic Church didn't start till 3 centuries after Christ? So a lot of it is innocent ignorance. And we have to remember that and
This is
respect
why
that.
the Lord is so gracious to us.
Absolutely.
Why God is he meets us where we're at.
Absolutely.
And if we, truly desire, more, will give us more and show us more.
Absolutely.
And that's what is so wonderful about our Heavenly Father is that, he has a way, but he is very long-suffering until,
Mhm. I've heard it described before as using the two terms position and condition. We can talk about lots of people who aren't in the official position that Christ established and preserved and has kept here to this day. But there are way too many people who are in the right position whose hearts are certainly not in the right condition. Lots of arrogance comes with that. It happened to the Jewish people, as we see in scriptures. It happens to the true church people too. So we got to watch that. Christ said many times, look, I've seen more faith outside than inside. So God's looking at the heart, and then the heart that's truly seeking him, he will not lead astray.
Well, and that's what's just hard for me when you talk about the tomb. I heard nothing about that on the news.
That's because someone got slapped at the Oscars.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Right, yeah.
No, there you go. I mean, I've not heard anything coming. That's what the news was this past, for however long, or it's obviously the war in Ukraine. I mean, it's like certain things are what we're fed when there's a whole nother world, it is, it's like, I don't know. I mean, do other countries hear about this, or is it the same thing? I mean, I was amazed that we weren't hearing anything about this.
Yeah.
It's whatever's on our Facebook feed for the day, or our Instagram feed, for the day, when there's so many more things that are happening, and good things too. It's not all
absolutely.
bad. It's not all bad. There's good things happening too.
I don't think we would have heard about this on news anyway. But the one thing I did find interesting it was live I was on Facebook and the news popped up live because I don't watch the news, but I clicked on it. And it was in Israel, and they were celebrating the Palm Sunday. And I found it very interesting because they're walking down with their palm branches, and they're real narrow, I call them walkways.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a car, but I mean, they do, or horses, or however they used to get around. And, but this gentleman that was doing the live feed, he kept saying, there is absolutely zero not terrorists, there is zero,
Disruption,
no, like if we were to go visit, what would we call
foreigners, tourists.
Tourists. He goes, there's absolutely no tourists here. And it was like he was happy about it and disappointed. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't figure out if it was, but I found that very interesting and it was all Jewish, all the Jewish line, people. And there was a lot of them, and I'm thinking, and they were crammed in this little tight thing. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I can't imagine if there were tourists. I can't say that word today. There, my goodness, But I don't know. I just found the timing and everything we're going through.
Yep.
And this happening at this time in
Yes.
history. There's got to be a connection in there somewhere.
Sabbath year.
Yes, Sabbath year.
Now, keep in mind, if I get home today on this glorious Easter day and I stub my toe, I didn't stub my toe because it's a Sabbath year. So there's a balance to things. But yes, but Russia invading Ukraine, other things going on, and we'll touch more on that Wednesdays too. So here's Abraham in Shechem, where later will be Jacob's well, where later will be Joseph's tomb. Where here, Abraham, as we read in Genesis 12, sets up an altar to God who brought him here. So every point of all of this is connected. All of this is related and is inter-impacting. And so the key to that is recognizing that in our own lives as well as these things. There are not a lot of coincidences when it comes to the Lord. So Abraham moves on from here. He goes between Bethel and Ai, however you want to say it. Bethel, which means house of God, which it will later get that name from Abraham's grandson Jacob. And it's thinking, and Ai will later be attacked by Joshua's folks. So we bring that up there. So here we have the Jordan River. There's Joseph's tomb in Nablus, Shechem up there. Here's Bethel, here's Ai, and down here is Jerusalem, Tel Aviv up over here on the coast. So later on, Moses and his folks are going to be camped here at Shittim on this side of the Jordan. Joshua will lead them across the Jordan River. There's Jericho, there's Ai right there. So that's kind of relation to all those different things. A little bit more of a zoom out there. So this is where Abraham ends up for a little bit before he's driven further. Well, if he finally made it to Canaan, the promised land, why does he keep moving? Well, there's this little thing called a famine in the land. Not for the last time. So for about the past 500 years, the climate's becoming more and more arid or dry. And we know that's what was driving the Amorites down from the north with their horse-drawn chariots and all that stuff. But especially in these last 50 years, since all those earthquakes destroyed the early Bronze Age cities, and we now are in the middle Bronze Age as a result of that, it's gotten even worse. The Jordan River is much lower, and these are secular things we see outside in the world that fit the time of Abraham that we're talking about here, 1876 BC. So we see all that. So Abraham's not the only one who's driven south. Well, there are two places you can go right now that are actually doing well. One, Sumer, under the Ur-3 dynasty, city of Ur-Nammu, with their government-run agricultural system. That's all working very well. But they're not liking foreigners coming in, so they're keeping them out. So Sumer, land of Ur, is out. That leaves Egypt and the Nile. So Abraham, not just Abraham, but lots of other folks come down to Egypt during this time of famine. And so that brings us to, let's read from verse 10 of chapter 12 into the first two verses of chapter 13. So Abram has some adventures here in Egypt that we're a little familiar with. Genesis chapter 12, picking up in verse 10. There was a famine in the land. So Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. It came about when he came near to Egypt that he said to Sarai, his wife, "See now, I know that you are a beautiful woman. And when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife,' and they will kill me, but they will let you live. Please say that you are my sister, so that it may go well with me because of you, and that I may live on account of you." Let me pause right here. Dumb. Yes, Sarai is his half sister, same dad, different moms. Don't let technicalities think that you are covering yourself. No, this is just bad. By the way, Abraham's 75, Sarah's 10 years younger. She's 65 at this time.
They're just babies.
I know. Abraham lives another 100 years. Yeah. And so not a lot of faith in God here.
And this is not his first time.
This actually is, he will do it later
Yeah,
with,
again.
it happens twice.
Yeah.
Abraham does it twice, and then his son Isaac later does it
We
as well.
talked about this in our
Yeah.
Bible study, didn't we, ladies? We were like, Abraham.
He was scared.
Now,
We were like, wow.
remember, beautiful sister ladies of the church, as much as you are encouraged to follow your godly husbands when they're being godly, not only are you not required to follow your husbands into sin, it actually would be sin for you. You answer to God before you answer to your husband.
Amen.
Husbands, you're impacting more than just yourself. You're not just saving your own butt and your own skin. Your choices and decisions are affecting lives and souls you've been entrusted with.
You will answer to God.
And you'll answer to God. Men of the church, we have a leadership responsibility in our mutual care of this church. Ladies of the church, children of the church, you have a role in holding us all to account in that. And you don't just get off because we slack. No, we're all in this together. But the good thing is God is the one who always provides, always provides, always provides. So he is faithful. Job said, "My Redeemer lives." Abraham's Redeemer lives. His Redeemer was not Pharaoh, Khety IV, not to be confused with Kenny. Now, God does have different things happen at different times, and God uses different things, but ultimately our loyalty, our trust, our faith is in God. And anything he has for us is not going to be contradictory to him. So reading on, I'll wind down here for today. Verse 14, came about when Abram came into Egypt, the Egyptians saw that the woman was very beautiful. Pharaoh's officials saw her and praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. Therefore, he treated Abram well for her sake and gave him sheep and oxen and donkeys and male and female servants and female donkeys and camels. But the Lord struck Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. Then Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this you have done to me? Why did you not tell me that she was your wife? Why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her for my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go." Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they escorted him away with his wife and all that belonged to him. So Abram went up from Egypt to the Negev, he and his wife and all that belonged to him, and Lot with him. Now Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver and gold. So we will pick up next week, looking at what sources outside the Bible have to say about plagues in Egypt right about this same time. We will see what the records of this Pharaoh Khety IV and his character have to say in comparison with what the Bible shows about his character here. In fact, we even have a letter he wrote to his son and how to be a man of character and how to conduct yourself. So we will take a look at that, compare and contrast that with Pharaoh as described here in the Bible. So that's what we have to look forward to next week. Any other thoughts, observations, comments, questions from anyone? Yeah.
Now, on the map, it looks like there's a river coming down kind of middle of the.
This is the Jordan River.
Okay, and then where it gets really wide, was there a dam there?
That's, there's not a dam. This is where the Jordan River lets out into the Dead Sea.
That's just natural?
Yep. That's natural. Yep.
Stay on your side of it, right?
That white line is actually, there's an armistice line from 1947. Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
Really?
That was my next question. Thank you.
Yes.
So one side belongs to one side, the other side.
Whoops,
belongs
that's
to
not what I
the
wanted.
other
Sorry.
side?
Like the ocean, how they have.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
In the ocean, there are such very.
I'm sorry. This one's the 1994 treaty line.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
We'll see when we get to the 6-Day War in 1967 that the city of Jerusalem, remember the 50s, 1767, Jerusalem belonged to the nation of Jordan at that time of the 6-Day War. And so we'll see Egypt's role in instigating the 6-Day War and what happened with Jerusalem in that.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a Dead Sea Museum right there.
Is that the one that they say is real salty?
Yeah, so salty you can float on. Yeah.
Float, yeah. Oh,
And that's why it's dead, too much salt for it.
Well, fish can't.
oh,
Yeah.
nothing. So, well, I was saying, so what, you can't really, you can't use it for anything.
No.
No,
You float it.
well, yeah, well, but I mean, it doesn't water crops.
One thing it was good for,
Yeah.
one thing it was good for, burying Sodom.
Oh, what?
Oh, Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's where Sodom and Gomorrah was? Really?
Yep.
Hmm.
And we'll get to that with the
That's where
separation.
Sodom came from, huh?
We'll get that, we'll get to that. And we'll get to that with the separation of Abraham and Lot. Yes. Fire and brimstone, we'll see the bitumen asphalt mines that they had there and all that stuff. Yeah. So we'll have Abraham come back from Egypt after we take a look at the Abram's Pharaoh, Khety IV from the 10th dynasty. We will see about the separation from Abraham and Lot in Genesis 13, where Abraham goes to Hebron and Lot goes down to Sodom and get to know the place. Yeah. Stay tuned. So with that, we will stop the share here. Any other thoughts, comments, questions from anyone? Yeah, fun stuff. All righty, so we will stop here.